Hey y'all, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my first bookish video, and I am so excited. I have been so nervous to like step into the world of booktube. But reading is quite literally one of my favorite hobbies, and so I feel like it'd be weird if I didn't share this part of my life with you guys because I am always reading. I've been wanting to make this video since the start of the year, so I figured I might as well go ahead and do it. But I'm going to be sharing with y'all my least two favorite books of 2024. I read 63 books last year, which I set a goal for myself to read 40, and I highly surpassed that, so I am very proud of myself. I'm gonna go through with y'all all 63 books from my least favorite to my most favorite, and keep in mind reading is super subjective, so just because I didn't like something doesn't mean that you won't like it, or it won't mean that it makes it any less of a good book. I already know I am gonna ruffle a couple of feathers because some of the ones that I have in my lowest ratings, a lot of people say that they are like their all-time favorite books, so sorry in advance if I offend you. I have a good bit of the books in the physical copies, but some I did read on my Kindle. I will say that my Kindle is probably what got me into reading more last year because it's just so easy. I feel like I read so much faster on my Kindle. I'm gonna start at number 63 and go all the way up to number 1. So in the 63rd spot, we have The Housemaid's Wedding by Frida McFadden. I feel almost disloyal to Frida by rating this book as the worst book that I read last year. Honestly, one, it was a short story, so it wasn't really a book. It was more of like a novella that she gave to us just to give you more of Millie's life. And while I love The Housemaid, I really feel like at this point we are just overdoing it and we don't need any more. Please, I beg, stop. But I just don't think that this was necessary, and I hope we don't get any more Millie stories. Number 62, this book, so many people recommended it to me and I was so disappointed, but it is Saving Noah by Lucinda Berry. I just wasn't a fan of like trying to get us to sympathize with a essayer. The ending, if you've ever read this book, I don't want to give like too much of a spoiler, but I didn't love it. That's all I'll say. Number 61, I really need y'all to hear me out and try your hardest not to bully me because this is people's favorite book. I have seen so many videos of people sobbing and crying, but A Little Life. This book was just not for me. I did not love it. As someone who has experienced a lot of the things in this book, I felt like this was just trauma corn, if you know what I mean. But hey, for some people I could see why this is something that like changed your life or gave you a new perspective. For me personally, I just did not need to relive a lot of the stuff that was in here, and I almost felt like at some points there was no point to it and it just kept going and going, and I know I'm gonna be attacked. This is a cult favorite. This has a cult following. It just wasn't for me, but hey, I'm happy to say that I read it because this is a super popular book, so I'm happy to say that I read it. It just wasn't for me. In the 60th spot is The Last Word by Taylor Adams, and I read this book because I was seeing so much discourse on TikTok about it, and it's like a super popular book talk book, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I wasn't a fan. There was a point when I was reading it where I was getting so bored that I actually had to switch over from my Kindle to listening to it because I thought I was gonna fall asleep. I could not tell you one detail about this book because that is how much I just didn't enjoy it. The next two are ones that I listened to exclusively on Audible, which is why I think they were ranked so low, because a lot of times with audiobooks, I tried not to listen to audiobooks because I feel like I cannot connect with them as much as whenever I'm just like physically reading the book. I'm pretty sure both of these were little short stories. But at number 59, we have One Little Mistake by Lucinda Berry. Again, I just do not think that her writing is for me. I know she has a cult following. People absolutely love her, so I know that her writing is amazing. It's just not for me. I will say though that this story was a good one to keep me entertained while I was cleaning, because there are some times where I like to listen to something while I'm cleaning. And then number 58, the exact same thing. I feel the exact same way about it. A Welcome Reunion. It's something that's going to be quick and easy to listen to while you're trying to get the house clean, but it's not something I necessarily would want to listen to again. It was, you know, fun for the one time, nice little easy thriller to get you going, has a good production. That's all I can really say. Number 57, this one is so funny. This was actually my last read of 2024, and it is How My Neighbor Stole Christmas by Megan Quinn. I really liked this one for what it was. It was like a bantery, fun Christmas read. I was looking for something that was gonna put me in that Christmas mood. I was enjoying it so much. It was just like very Grinchy vibes, like super fun read. And then we got to the point in the book where the two main characters start to, you know, canoodle a little. They start to fall in love, and it just became about spice. And I am someone who literally, like, I love a thick plot. I know some people literally read for the spice. I love a good plot. I was enjoying the plot of this book so much up until the moment that they did the deed for the first time, and then the book was exclusively about spice, and it ruined the whole thing for me. I feel like we lost the plot. Like I said, for what it was a super fun holiday read, so can't knock it, you know? It did what it had to do. 56 is Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. This was another book that was super hyped up over on Book Talk, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna give it a go. Like I said, I am a girl who loves a good thriller. I just feel like this book was trying to do too much, and there was times where I was like, wait, what? And I was having to go back and reread stuff because I was getting genuinely so confused, having to refresh my memory about things that happened like 10 pages ago. I just couldn't get into it. I finished it, and at the end I was like, what did I just read? I know that this is a lot of people's favorites. It just wasn't mine. I was so freaking sad about this one. So number 55 is Butcher and Blackbird. So the reason I was so sad about this one is because I had seen so much hype around this book, and I am someone, like, if you're gonna give me a thriller and you're gonna make it funny, like, I'm here for it. I want to read it. So I was super freaking excited. And listen, I'm not gonna say that this book wasn't entertaining. It was entertaining, but it was the same thing where, like, the first like 150 pages I was sucked in. The plot was incredible, and then as soon as the two main characters start doing the do for the first time, that's all the plot was. Like, it completely lost the plot, and I just wanted more of the plot. I thought that this book had such a unique theme, like two serial killers coming together, falling in love, and, you know, like unaliving other bad guys. Like, I thought that that was such a unique plot. I have never seen another book like that. I just wish that there was less spice and more plot. Don't kill me, don't kill me. This next one is so random. Number 54 is The Widow's Husband's Secret Lie by Frida McFadden. So this was a satirical short story, so it is not meant to be a serious thriller. It is meant for laughs, and I think a lot of people didn't realize that, because if you go and read like the Goodreads reviews on it, there's people tearing it apart because they're like, what is this? It's literally meant to make you laugh, and it did just that. Like, for me personally, I read it in 2 hours. It was the funniest thing that I have ever freaking read. It was so freaking funny, so lighthearted. Like, I thought it was perfect, honestly. Did I think it was like top 10 perfect? No. Okay, it's right where it needs to be on my list, but if you need just like a quick laugh and it still gives those thriller vibes, this is funny. It has pop culture jokes in it. Like, Frida really did her thing with this one. It gets too much hate in my opinion. I thought it was hilarious, and I hope that she does more like it. Number 53 was Pretty Little Liars, and I know that this seems so random, but I had a point last year where I was binging the show. I actually binged it twice last year, and so I was like, you know what, like, I cannot get enough of the show. I want to read the book. It was good for what it was. I'm happy that I read it. I'm a big Pretty Little Liars fan, so yeah. This one is gonna get me canceled because everybody else that I've seen, this book is always in their top 10, top 20. For me, it just wasn't it. At number 52, we have ACOTAR by Sarah J. Maas. Listen, I have heard many people say that this first book in this series was not their cup of tea, and that you gotta get through it and get to the second book, because everyone I know says that the second book is by far the best in the series. So do I plan on reading the second book? Yes. Do I plan on doing it anytime soon? No. Will I do it before the year is over? Most likely. But something about this book, I was just like, can we get to the point? And I will say, the last 25% of this book I thought was so well done. I thought it was amazing. The first 50% of the book, I felt like it dragged on, and there was so much information. I understand it's fantasy, so you need like world building, and it was my first fantasy book of the year, so that could be why like I didn't have the palette for it at the time. But I do want to see what the second book is like, and if I like it more. I just wasn't the biggest fan of this first one. Okay. Number 51, I randomly decided to reread Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. My first time reading this was actually back in 2022, and that's when I was strictly just reading Colleen Hoover. That's before I actually got into reading. But this is my favorite book ever by her, so I just wanted to do a quick reread. I still love it. I still love it. I still stand on it that this is the book that should have been turned into a movie. Right now, Reminders of Him, if you've never read it, this is by far Colleen Hoover's best book in my opinion. I feel like the other books don't hold a candle to it, so yeah. Number 50 was A Low Country Bride by Priscilla Williams. I actually read this while I was at the beach. I just needed a quick and easy little beach read, like something I could take out on the sand, read it while I sip my little drink and enjoy the waves. And you know what? This was exactly that. I'm also a wedding planner, so seeing someone else that works in the wedding world, I don't want to give too much away about any of these books, but she is dealing with an autoimmune disorder, and it was just so nice to see some representation in a book, not only with skin tone, but also someone who's dealing with a chronic illness. This was a really great fluffy beach read. Number 49, we have Good Girl, Bad Blood by Holly Jackson. This is kind of the same issue I have with the Housemaid series, where like I feel like there's just too much. Like I feel like A Good Girl's Guide to Murder is such a good book, and while I feel like this one was okay, I don't know, it might have been just like doing too much, like where it's just like, do we really need this? I feel like the mystery in this book was so unnecessary, and it was kind of like a separate entity from the first book. Like if this was like a continuation of the things that happened in the first book, which like for some elements of it is, but then for others it's just like completely unrelated. Like they don't need to be interconnected this way. I think that's why it's so low on the list, because I loved A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, but this one just didn't feel like it was necessary. Number 48, we have The Silent Patient. This is another book that was so hyped up on Book Talk, so I was so excited for it. And I'm just gonna tell y'all, again, I am someone that loves thrillers, and this did not thrill me. It did not. I will say there are some really great twists in this book, some really good twists, but I was bored to tears for like 75% of it. I'm not gonna lie to you. I will say though, the plot twist at the end, it got me. It got me good. I literally sat straight up in bed. I was like, oh! We have another Kindle Unlimited pick. This is One Week in Paradise by Anise Starr. I read this one during the summer. I was just looking for something that felt tropical and beachy. It's a brother's best friend read, which normally I hate that trope. I don't know why. I'm just not into it. Another instance where like the plot was super fun. Like it was basically about a girl who was an influencer. She gets invited on this influencer trip. She has to bring a guest. So she's like, okay, I'm gonna bring my brother's best friend. We'll pretend like we're dating. It was a super fun plot, and I had never seen anything else done like it before. Again, I was interested in the plot, and then they do what they gotta do, and that's all the book was about. 46. It feels criminal to have another Frida book this low, but The Perfect Son by Frida McFadden. And I did not hate this book, but I did not love this book. I had this one figured out from the literal first page, and if you know anything about thrillers, I cannot tell you a thing because it's gonna ruin the entire book if you haven't read it yet. But literally from the first page, I knew exactly where the story was going, and it sucked. I hate knowing the plot, especially when it comes to a Frida book, because I think that she is so good at plot twists. So whenever there's a book where like the plot twist just isn't plot twisting and it was like, well duh, that was obvious, it hurts my soul. But not only did I think that this plot twist was like super obvious, I also like hated the characters. I hated the character. There wasn't one character in this book where I was like, I'm rooting for you. Not, well, maybe the sister, but that's it. At number 45, we have The Silent Wife by Karen Slaughter. This wasn't a bad book. It just read like NCIS. Like it was like a mystery, like you're going along with the detectives, you're trying to figure out the mystery. And actually it was about the Georgia Federal Investigations Bureau. I think that's what it's called. I'm from Georgia, so I thought that was super fun. But my biggest thing was I thought this was gonna be more, or I was gonna read more of like a thriller, because that's what I was used to from her. And to me it was just so like mystery heavy, police heavy, and like I should have known that from the synopsis, but I try not to read the synopsis too much when I'm reading a thriller because I feel like it takes away from it. I just think if you're into like those mystery shows, like the detective shows, you would really like something like this. I don't even like Law and Order, I'm gonna be honest. Next we have When I Think of You by Maya Ariel. I really loved the vibe of this book. It was like Hollywood and glamour and office politics, and I really did enjoy enjoy that. I just wasn't too keen on the love story between these two. I just feel like Kalaya deserves so much more than Danny. I hate to see a strong, independent woman who has her stuff together, knows what she wants in life. I hate to see them settle for a man who wants to make them feel less. And I feel like throughout a lot of this book, that is what was happening. Like, Kalaya was so strong, and Danny almost to me just seemed like emotionally immature. And I think that that's what took away from this book for me. I love the plot. I love the idea of this book. It's a second chance romance, which I personally love a good second chance romance. I just feel like this was one man that did not deserve a second chance. This next one's really interesting because it's an Audible exclusive, and it is one of my favorite audiobooks I have ever listened to. So at number 43, we have Mad Love. If you are going to listen to any audiobook thriller, it has to be this one. The production on this book is so good. There is sound effects, there is multiple characters, because you know sometimes when you're listening to an audiobook it is one person for every single voice or two people for every voice. There are multiple voices, there's sound effects, there's music. It is literally so good. You need a good thriller to throw on while you're cleaning your house and you want something that's immersive and it feels like you're watching TV even though you're not. You have to listen to this one. It is so good. Number 42, we have a little bit of a throwback. We have Twilight. Same thing with Pretty Little Liars. I had a Twilight phase last year. I have a Twilight phase once a year where I will watch the movies, all of them, back to back to back to back, over and over and over again for months. I do not know why, okay? I think it's just like a comfort thing. Like, I find comfort in Twilight. So I was like, hey, I haven't read this since I was in middle school. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna read the series. Started out with Twilight, and y'all, when I say that Bella's character is so much funnier, has so much more personality, I just liked her so much more in this book. And I also really liked Jacob a lot more in here and disliked Edward. I actually found Edward super annoying. I kind of wish that they had stayed a little bit more true to the books because Bella was just so enjoyable. I just feel like maybe the book was just like a little bit better than the movie. At number 41 is The Housemaid is Watching by Frida McFadden. Again, we can just stop with the add-ons for The Housemaid. Okay, this book was so unnecessary in my opinion. It added nothing to the story, and it was really sad because I remember being on vacation and I was waiting for this book to come out, and I spent a whole day on my vacation reading this book because I was so excited. The reason why it's so high up on my list is because I am such a housemaid girl. Like, I love the first two books, and so I was happy at the time to just get something else from that world. And I will say there were a lot of good twists in this book, and we did get more character development from Millie. But we could have done without this book. I'm happy that we got it, but we could have done without it. At number 40, we have Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. Honestly, this was such a fun read, and again, this is a book where someone has a chronic illness, and so it was nice to see some representation. And I feel like in this book, it was heavily focused upon like what this illness does for Chloe's body and how it limits the things that she can do. And also, one thing that I love to see happen in a book is a man pining after a woman, like pining after them. I feel like in a lot of books, it's the other way around, where like the woman is trying so hard to like fix the man and she's doing all this and she's going out of her way. In this book, the man is pining. He is doing what he has to do, y'all, and I loved to see that. There's so much banter in this book. It was so freaking funny. It was also like a rivals to lovers type of situation, which I really enjoyed. I feel like this book had like the perfect amount of spice. Like, it wasn't too much spice, it was just enough spice, and honestly I ate it up. It was so good. At number 39 is actually the first book that I read when I got my Kindle, and that is The Teacher by Frida McFadden. Tell y'all, this book, I literally this was one where it's like I couldn't have seen any of these twists and turns coming. There were so many twists in this book that I was like, Miss Ma'am, what is going on? I also think one of the reasons why it's rated so low, again, it's a thriller, so I'm not going to go too much into it, but I just got creeped out by the relationship dynamics in this book. Obviously, it's about a teacher and student. Obviously, you can tell that from the title. And as a former teacher, even though I did teach like preschool aged kids, still it gave me the creeps, and I was very uncomfortable throughout a good bit of it. So I think that's why it's rated so low for me. But it did have some pretty good twists. It had some really, up until the last page. The last page, anyone who's read that freaking epilogue knows we're all like, wait, what? Like, the last page hit me in the face super hard. I made homemade bread. That's a nice little snack. At number 38, we have Kyland by Mia Sheridan. Mia Sheridan, along with Colleen Hoover, are the two people who got me into reading back in 2022. Archer's voice is literally ingrained in my brain. It will forever be one of my top favorite books. I just think it is amazing. So I wanted to read another book by her. This book towards the end of winter last year, and I feel like that was the perfect time to read it. So if you were going to read it this year, this would be the best time to read it. I feel like with the weather outside right now, the scenery of this book hits so much better. It's literally set at the top of a rocky mountain town. It's like a small town vibes. A very poor town at the very top of the mountains, and then towards the bottom of the mountains is where you have the kids who have like a little bit more money. It's a rivals to lovers story, and it's about two kids who are going for the same scholarship, and if they don't get the scholarship, they don't go to college. This book made me cry at certain points. It was just so emotional, and even talking about it right now, I kind of want to reread it again already because it was just so good. So if you're gonna read a Mia Sheridan book, I will say that this is the one you should read, aside from Archer's voice. For 37, we have The Inmate by Frida McFadden. I remember reading this book. Again, this is one of the ones where I'm like, I hate every single one of these characters. I hate all of them. The main character, she was just so stupid, and she was making decisions where it's just like, this is exactly what someone told you not to do, and you're doing it anyways, and then you're wondering why the things that are happening are freaking happening. I will say, if you're looking for a popcorn thriller that is super quick to get through, I finished this in like a day and a half. I could have finished it in a day if I had the time that day, but it was just, you're gonna be like wanting to throw this thing at the wall. That is how I felt the entire time. I'm like, I just want to throw this book at the wall and scream at this girl. I wish she could freaking hear me. But I will say, what bumped this book up above The Teacher was the epilogue in this book. My jaw was on the floor. I was like, what? Don't want to spoil it, that takes away from the fun, but you're basically just trying to figure out a murder that happened years and years and years ago, and it is just a roller coaster ride, y'all. It is a roller coaster. So we have The Coworker, another Frida McFadden book. You know, this book was just a fun read. I read this book in like 3 hours. It was just a super fun read. It's another popcorn thriller. That's what Frida does best, is really good popcorn thrillers. And yeah, it was a good book. I'm not gonna lie, like, I really enjoyed it. A lot of people hate this book. I could see why, okay? There are some things in it where I'm like, is this necessary? Like, there's like a running joke about turtles in there, and you just hear about turtles over and over and over and over again, and it does make you want to rip your hair out. But other than that, I just feel like it was such a fun read, and I'm not ashamed to say that. I will say there were some points where it was all over the place, and I'm just like, wait, what? But hey, what are you gonna do? I'm a girl who loves chaos, and it was very chaotic. So at number 35, we have Home is Where the Bodies Are by Geneva Rose. I am a Geneva Rose stan. I will not take any Geneva Rose slander. This was her newest release from last year. So excited to get it. I remember going and getting it the day that it came out. The plot of this book is just so freaking good. It's about 3 siblings. Their mother just passed away, so they are coming home. They're trying to sort out all of her belongings and figure out who's gonna get what. They stumble upon this cassette tape, and on this cassette tape is something very, very disturbing. And so throughout the entire book, you were trying to figure out what the hell is happening, what went on, and what transpired to get to the moment that was on the cassette tape. It's a mystery that the whole entire town has been trying to figure out for years, and this was just such a page turner. This had so many twists. There were so many things in here I did not see coming. I thought that this book was done so well. It would have been higher if she didn't have other books that I liked more. But oh my gosh, if you are looking for a thriller that you haven't read yet, this is one that you need to pick up. I absolutely love this book. At number 34, we have another Talia Hibbert book. It's Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute. This is just a super cute and light YA read. I'm not usually a YA fan because obviously it's literally young adult, so sometimes I feel like they just read a little bit too young for me. I think it had to do with the time of year that I read this book. I read it in the fall, and this literally takes place with the 2 main characters going camping on a school trip. It's actually a best friends, 2 rivals, 2 lovers book, which I really loved. I thought that was such a unique little twist to it. It's just quirky, it was cute, the banter was really fun. I think I read it in between 2 thrillers, so it was also a really good palate cleanser because I think I read like a very disturbing thriller before this one, and I was like, I need something that is going to erase all of those images from my mind, and it did its job. At number 33, we have Twisted Games by Anna Huang. I was super excited for this book because hearing princess romance, like, hello, exactly, like I need it. And I read it directly after I read Twisted Love, so I was super duper excited to dive in. I am a girl who loves Bridgerton. I am a Bridgerton stan, and actually around the time that I read this book, I was watching the new season of Bridgerton, and so I just knew that this was going to be so good, and it was good. It is basically about a princess. She's a princess over a very small country, and she falls in love with her bodyguard. Okay, obviously he's her bodyguard, so there are a lot of circumstances surrounding their relationship that just makes it a fun little ride. Okay, I think with this one I had the exact same issue where it's like the plot was so good, a lot of the smut just overtook the plot at times. There were some really spicy scenes in this book. Okay, if you believe all of the TikToks you've ever seen about this book is it's spicy. Number 32 is Do Not Disturb by Frida McFadden. I don't know how to describe this one, but this book felt so much different than what Frida has done in the past. I don't know what order this book comes and like how she wrote it, but it just felt different than the other books I read by her, and I love that. I feel like if you're looking for a book that has lots of twists and you are on the edge of your seat the entire time, this one is perfect in my opinion. I thought the characters in this one were really good. I thought that the plot twists were really good. I just feel like overall this is a really solid thriller, and again, it's a popcorn thriller, so I read this in like 4 hours. That is how fast-paced it is. 31, we have Twisted Love. This is such an unpopular opinion. I feel like whenever you see people rating the Twisted series, usually Twisted Love is towards the bottom of their list and Twisted Games is at number 1, but I just feel like this book is unmatched in my opinion. I feel like Twisted Games was a good read, Twisted Love was a great read, and that is just my opinion. So many people say that this book is like too smutty for them. I actually feel like this book had the perfect amount of smut compared to the plot. A lot of people always complain as well that the plot is just very unrealistic because it is about a millionaire, I can't remember which one it is, but he has copious amounts of money and he's in like his mid-20s, like he is young, and he's falling in love with his best friend's sister. I feel like this is a love story that had so much more to offer to it than just the love story itself. There was multiple different mysteries throughout this book as well, where like you're trying to figure out these traumatic events that happen to both the female main character and then the male main character throughout the book. It just has a special place in my heart. It's really good. At number 30, we have The Dare by Natasha Preston. This is my first ever Natasha Preston book, and she does write young adult thrillers, and basically this is just about a group of high school friends. They've been friends for a long time. They come from a small town, but they have these senior pranks that they don't call senior pranks. It's more of like dares. Like everybody gets a dare that they have to do senior year. There are some very scandalous things that go on in this book, and the group of friends, they were dared to do something that is going to change their lives forever. This book was insane, y'all. I have never read a young adult thriller like this one. Like I feel like it was the perfect amount of YA that kind of teetered almost into just regular old thriller, and I loved it. I loved it so much, and I want to read more by her because I just think that this book was so well done. Number 29, we have The Ex by Frida McFadden. You're gonna see there are so many Frida books on this list. I just fell in love with her writing this year, and I love how easy her books are to read and how they literally feel like you can just sit down and get comfortable and just unwind. I love the characters in this one. I love the plot twist. I really hate that I can't give you more information about thrillers without ruining them. If you're gonna do a list of like the top 5 Frida books that you should read, I say this one ranks somewhere around 4 or 5. This is gonna be such an unpopular opinion, and I don't know why, but at number 28 we have One of Us is Dead by Geneva Rose. This book, in my opinion, gets way too much hate. This is such a fun book. First of all, if you are a Georgia girly and you are familiar with the Atlanta area, you will love this because it gets very specific into some of the places in Buckhead, which is in Atlanta. Basically, this is just about a group of women, and they meet up all the time at this hair salon. One of the women is the owner of the hair salon. I will say the first 70% of this book is literally just banter, like back and forth drama. It kind of reads like Real Housewives of Atlanta a little bit, and you're just seeing these girls like they have drama and issues, and it's like the buildup. And then the last 30% is where you get that thrill in and you're seeing like what the actual issue is. But I think having all of the buildup and everything that led up to it, I think that's what made this book so enjoyable for me. And it felt like one of my friends wrote this, like a peer wrote it, and I couldn't put it down. I thought it was really good. I did. A lot of people don't agree, but I think this book is so freaking fun. At number 27, we have Did You Hear About Kitty Carr by Crystal Smith Paul. If you have read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, you want something that gives those vibes, this book did just that for me. I also enjoyed how there was so much history in this book, and as a black woman, like, I learned so many things that I did not know going through this book, and I just loved it. I loved it so much. This is definitely something that I'll probably reread this year. At number 26, we have The Friend Zone by Abby Jimenez. I think this was actually the first Abby Jimenez book that I read, and I absolutely fell in love with her. I feel like this book gets so much hate because a lot of people think that it's a little bit superficial and shallow, and they didn't see the connection between the characters, and I actually would say I disagree. I just felt super connected to the main character, like very oddly connected. Like literally after the book was over, I was so sad because I wanted to know more about the main character's life and what else she was gonna get up to. This book also has a tragedy that the male main character goes through, and it's really interesting to see how him and the female main character work through it. I laughed during this book, I cried a lot, and I highlighted so many things. At number 25, we have The Housemaid's Secret. This is the second book in the Housemaid series, and I actually really enjoy this book. There are some people that think it wasn't necessary, and while I don't think it was necessary, I do think we could have stopped after the first book. I will say that I feel like this was a book that added to the series instead of took away from it. Last two books in the series, I do feel like they took away from it a little bit because it was just doing too much, but this one I feel like added more. We got more context clues, we found out more about Millie that we needed to know, and I really loved the plot twist in this book. Okay, again, if there's one thing Frida McFadden can do and she does very well, it is write a damn good epilogue. Like, she knows how to keep you intrigued until the very last page. This is something that she gave us and it added to it, so I am very grateful. Okay, I love this book. At number 24, we have one of Frida's newer releases, The Boyfriend. I read this actually while I was on a cruise. I read it in like a day and a half. It was so good. I remember not being able to put it down. Like, we were at dinner and I had my Kindle at dinner while I'm like eating, and I'm like, and I felt so rude, but at the same time I was like, no, I need to finish this book. This is one of her better thrillers in my opinion. It's dual timeline, so we're going to present day and then we're going a couple of years back in the past, and you're seeing how these two things interconnect, and then once you get to the end of the story, and again, the way that this one twists, like, it scratched something in my brain that I cannot explain. I hate that I read so many thrillers because I can't tell you anything. It's so good. What more can I say? At number 23, this is actually so funny that this book is 23 because it took me 5 months to finish this book, and that is Happy Place by Emily Henry. And the reason why it took me 5 months was because, I'm not gonna lie, the first 100 pages of this book were very slow for me. I found myself putting it down. I found myself wanting to DNF it. I did DNF it a few times, but something in the back of my mind told me, just give it a chance, and I know you're gonna love it. So there was one day where I forced myself, I sat down, I started reading, and I did not want to put it down once I got to that place. I'm a girly who loves a good second chance romance. If you don't know anything about my marriage, mine and my husband's marriage is actually a second chance romance, and so I think that's why I closely connect with these kind of books. And I think the reason why at first I was having a hard time getting into this was because I was thinking that this was just like some cute fluffy summer read, and it is not that, y'all. There are so many life lessons to be learned with this book. I felt like I closely connected with our female main character. I think that that's why originally I couldn't get into it, because you don't start to see those things, and you don't start to see the way that she feels, the way that she thinks, until you dive deep into the book. I think the reason why I think this book is so beautiful is because it shows you what growing up does to friendships, and not only friendships but relationships as well. I just learned so many things from this book, and I love it. It has a special place in my heart. I cannot believe it took me 5 months to read it. At number 22, we have Still Beating by Jennifer Hartman. This is a thriller turned romance. The first half of the book is completely thriller, like you are just like, what is going on? The first half of the book literally starts with a kidnapping, and then the second half of the book is a romance that takes place after this kidnapping. I have never read anything else like this. I've never read something where it starts off so thriller heavy and then goes into romance, and at times honestly this book was a little bit too heavy for me and I had to put it down because it just was doing things to me. Honestly, there are some very disturbing descriptions in here. I think I actually ended up giving this book like a 4.5 stars 5-star rating. Really good book. I just don't know how else to describe it without completely spoiling this one because it has such a unique plotline. Number 21, we have another Geneva Rose book, and that is You Shouldn't Have Come Here. Another thriller. If you can't tell, I am a thriller girl, okay? This one is about a girl named Grace who is going away because she works in New York. She's very overworked. She needs a little country good old getaway, like no cell reception, no work, just her book, and some comfort in the country, okay? And immediately red flags from page 1, red flag. This was such a wild ride. Like I said, the main character's name is Grace. She's staying at this Airbnb in the middle of nowhere. The guy who owns the Airbnb stays at the house. He never leaves. And you know, they might fall in love. They might be doing a little something. Things just hit the fan. And she really shouldn't have come here because things hit the fan, and they hit the fan fast. Number 20, we have A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I already basically went over this one when I was talking about Good Girl Bad Blood, but this is just the first book in the series. We're following Pip along, and she is trying to figure out a mystery that has been plaguing her town for years. Not really even a mystery because they kind of already had like a bad guy, like someone that they said this is who absolutely did this, but Pip just doesn't think that what everyone else thinks is the truth. So she's trying to go about and she's trying to figure it all out, put the pieces together. It's such a good book, and it's YA, so it was a super easy read. I loved it. At number 19, we have Never Lie by Frida McFadden. This is so many people's favorite Frida book, and I would have to agree when I say it's one of my favorites, obviously. This thriller, y'all, like, this is one where genuinely I could not put any of the puzzle pieces together until I got to the last few chapters. I see, actually, a lot of people say that it was predictable. I did not feel that way at all. Like, this was so intriguing to me. Not giving too much away about it, basically there's this newlywed couple and they get snowed into this house looking for like a new house to buy, and they went to see this house. They ended up getting snowed in. But while they're there, the wife, she finds these tapes from this therapist, and she is like listening to these tapes, and y'all, insane. Like, you're putting puzzle pieces together as you're listening to the tapes, and the twists and the turns of this one are just crazy. I will say that this is one of the best twists that Frida has ever done because it's just genuinely, you don't see it coming. At number 18, we have The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and this is one that literally everybody who is in the book world has read. This is another one that took me 4 or 5 months to finish because at first, whenever I was reading like the first 30 pages, I just wasn't into it. Like, this is one that you really have to give a chance, and once you get into like the first 100 pages, you're hooked and you want to know more. This is another one that has like a really unique way of telling the story because basically we are following along in the life of Evelyn Hugo, and we're doing it from the perspective of a journalist that is getting the scoop. She's the first person to ever be able to get the scoop from Evelyn's mouth herself. It's incredible how it all works itself together to go through the glamorous life that is old Hollywood and to see this Hollywood sensation that everyone loves and knows. She's a household name, and like to hear about her life. I just think this was done so beautifully, so well. The writing is amazing, and the twist at the end is insane. At number 17, we have Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell. This is one of the most disturbing things I have ever read. This is basically about a teenage girl named Ellie Mack, and she goes missing, and we are going through the years to see how her family copes with it, and also we're trying to figure out what happened to Ellie. And as the pieces unfold, it's dual point of view, so you are going from present day to past to present day to past. As the pieces unfold, this is one of the most disturbing stories I've ever heard. I actually had to take several breaks while reading this, and I also couldn't read it at night because that's how badly it disturbed me. I had a few people who I recommended this to that read it, and they said that they were not disturbed, and I'm like, oh. But overall, it's a really, really, really good book. I would just say please look up the trigger warnings because I feel like it's very trigger heavy. Number 16, we have The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. This is the newest Hunger Games book, and not only did I read this book, I have watched the movie like 7 or 8 times. It is by far my favorite movie in the Hunger Games series. I will say that the movie actually did a perfect job at depicting the book. I feel like that this is one of the only times where that has happened, and they just did such a beautiful job because as I was reading the book after I watched the movie, I wish I would have read the book first, but it's okay. As I was reading the book after I watched the movie, everything that is mentioned in this book, with like an exception of like a couple details, showed up in that movie. I thought it was insane. Basically, if you want to know the origin stories of President Snow and how he came to be who he is, you need to read this book. That was actually, I just realized I said number 15. That was actually number 16. This is number 15. This is The Last Miss Parrish. I'm gonna be honest with y'all, I read this book because a lot of people were saying that The Housemaid was a ripoff of this book, and I'm not gonna say that it was a ripoff, but I do feel like Frida McFadden might have been inspired by some of the things that transpired in this book, because I do think that there were some very big differences between The Housemaid and this book. Again, this is another thriller, but I feel like this is more so of a psychological thriller. It's not really like a thriller in the sense of like, oh my god, I'm terrified, what's gonna happen next. Not really like that. It's basically about this woman named Amber, and she ends up befriending this woman named Daphne and her family, and she's going from her very drab life and she's being integrated into this life of money and vacations and boats, and it's very obvious that Amber wants Daphne's life, and that's all I'll tell you about it. But it's a really good read, okay? Like I said, Frida might have been a little bit inspired, but I won't say that if you've read The Housemaid and you read this one, that this one will just be like the complete copy. It's not. So you should still read it if you haven't read it. At number 14, we have Their Vicious Games by Joelle Wellington. If you were to take The Bachelor and mix it up with The Hunger Games, that is exactly what this book is. It's about a bunch of girls that are basically fighting into the death to get a coveted scholarship. And this book is so incredible. I remember biting my nails at every twist and turn of this book for these girls, literally fighting to get this scholarship, and not only fighting to get this scholarship, but fighting to get an in into this exclusive family that would give them a life that they have never thought of. Oh my gosh, this is not one that I ever see anybody talk about, and it is just one that I feel like everybody should read. It is so good, so incredible. This will definitely be reread this year because every time I find a book that I really love, like, I feel like I have to reread it, and I just really love this book. At number 13 is The Next Miss Wimberley by Monica Arya. This is an author that I do not see many people talking about, and it's crazy because she is one of my new favorite authors. She is so talented. She is a thriller author, and she is just incredible. Again, another thriller, so yeah, I cannot give you much. This was such a good freaking thriller. I remember being up at 3 o'clock in the morning trying to finish this book because I did not want to put it down. I finished it in a day. I did not want to put it down, and then once I finished it, I was so scared. I was so terrified. At number 12, we have Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. Fun fact, this is the first book that I did like actual tabs in, because the writing, the experiences, everything in this book is top tier. This is a romance. It's exactly how it sounds. We're following Alexis and we're following Daniel, and basically their lives could not be any more polar opposite. Their romance to me was so fun. There was a lot of banter in here, but then there was also some very serious stuff. I feel like Abby Jimenez does a really good job at that, where like she can write such a banter heavy book, but then there's also very serious things that you can relate to with life. I just also really love, I know this is not like a fantasy series, so like world building is something that people usually say when they're talking about fantasies, but I feel like Abby Jimenez does a very great job at world building in her books. A lot of her stories are interconnected series, and so it really helps when you can imagine from book to book, like, oh, this is that place and this is where that happened. She does an incredible job at that, and it started in this book. She started with her world building in this book, and so every time you read a book after this, like, you can just imagine the scenes and where they're taking place. Speaking of which, next is Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. Again, world building. I love that everyone in her books, they are friends, so it's nice to see like little glimpses of the last characters but then get a completely new story. I think it's fun. With this one, both of our main characters are doctors, and their main way of communicating when they're at work is like these cute little letters, and he signs them off with Yours Truly. So it's so cute, so freaking cute. But the male main character in this book, I really liked him. He was very awkward. He was very awkward, and I think that's what made it even better, because he wasn't like your typical like macho man, like F-boy, because a lot of the books I read, like the boys kind of start off as F-boys. He's just awkward from the very get-go, and I love how like he opens up a shell to our female main character, and he shows her parts of himself he doesn't show other people, and I think that's why I loved it so much. Again, I tabbed it. There were so many great things in this book. At number 10, we have The Perfect Marriage by Geneva Rose. Okay, listen, this is one of the books that got me into thrillers. I think that the twists and the turns in this book, the last couple of chapters, I was just like, excuse me, my jaw was on the floor. I did not see any of it coming. Basically, it's just about a couple. The husband is a cheater and his mistress is found dead, okay? And I can tell you all of that because it's on the very back of the book, so I'm not spoiling it for you. But basically, we're just trying to figure out what the hell happened to the mistress, okay? This one's insane. It really is a good read. A lot of people complain because they're like, there's a lot of plot holes. There are, but I'm not here, again, for a long time. I'm here for a good time. And this book was a good time. Number 9, I have Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan, and I had a copy, but I think I let someone borrow it because I cannot find it for the life of me. But again, this is a second chance romance between a couple that is divorced. It also takes place again in Atlanta, so I love any story that takes place here in Georgia because it just feels more personal to me. But we are just following our main characters along life post-divorce, trying to raise their children, trying to own a restaurant together. And I think my favorite part about this book was the strong female friendships in this book. Sometimes when I read romance, I find that there aren't many strong female friendships, and it's just about the female main character and the male main character trying to fall in love, and the outside friendships are very superficial. But the friendships in this book were so strong, and the women in this book are so strong, and I think that was my absolute favorite part. Like, the romance was good. The romance was great. There were a lot of life lessons. There were some triggering things in this book as well. But my favorite part about it were definitely the friendships, and it made me want to go and make strong female friendships. Like, after I read this book, I remember going, hey, I really want to work on having stronger female friendships because it was just beautiful. It was beautiful. Lots of beautiful life lessons in here. Loved it. So then it's only fitting that number 8 is the second book in this series, which is This Could Be Us. I need to get the physical copy of this one. I read it on my Kindle because it was on Kindle Unlimited for free. We're following up on another one of our characters from Before I Let Go, and she is in the pits of hell in her marriage basically, and then her husband gets charged with some very serious crimes. And basically throughout the book, we're watching as like behind the scenes of their life unravels, and she kind of figures out like the things that he was doing behind her back in their marriage. But this one was incredible because this was a woman who had been told during her marriage that like basically she couldn't do anything. Like, she had to depend on her husband. Like, without him she wouldn't be anything. And then she went out there and she made a name for herself doing something that she never thought she could. And this, like, the strong female friendships, the strong female leadership in this book was just incredible. Like, honestly, a character that I can look up to and be like, oh, I aspire to be like her, because she was a strong ass woman, and I loved it. I loved it so much. Oh yeah, by the way, this is also a love story. Number 7, finally, The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. I know I've been talking about it this whole freaking video, and you're probably like, when is it gonna show up? Here we go. Everybody and their mother knows this book, but basically it's just about a young girl named Millie. She accepts a job as a housemaid. She's a felon. She cannot get a job anywhere else, and she finally gets this job, and the benefits are great, the pay is great, she takes it, but it is not as she seems. Or what? It is not as it seems. She's not as she seems either. But whoa, this was my first introduction to Frida McFadden, and the twists and the turns that this book took me on had my head spinning. I was like, what is happening? It is a page turner. It is one that you are gonna get done in a day for sure, and if you don't, I will be so surprised because I finished this in a day. It is so good. It is so good. I am so excited for the freaking movie to come out. Hopefully the movie is just as good as the book. At number 6, we have Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. This is by far, obviously, my favorite Abby Jimenez book ever. This book is about Emma and Justin, and it's funny because they meet basically on like a Reddit forum where they're just talking about how both of them, like, after their ex stops dating them, their next partner that they find, they end up marrying. So it's like they have curses, and they figure, hey, if we date each other, we can break the curse. Like, if we date each other, then we break up, like maybe we'll both find our perfect matches after we break up. Again, this is in the same world as the last 2 Abby Jimenez books, and it just is like the perfect ending to the story. And this was by far my favorite. These are my favorite 2 characters. They had my favorite plot lines, following their lives and like the things that that they had going on in their lives. They lived two very different lives, very, very, very different, and watching them interconnect the way that they did was beautiful. And I highlighted so many things in this book. There were so many quotes that I felt deep in my soul, and this is just, again, another prized possession. Like, this is an incredible, 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 incredible book. Okay, we are down to our coveted top 5 books of 2024. At number 5, we have Mad Honey by Jodi Picoult. Oh, and Jennifer Boylan. I think that they wrote this together. This I thought was a thriller, which I will still say, like, there are parts of it that feel a little bit thrilling, but this is more of like a mystery, like a whodunit. And basically we're following this mom named Olivia, and we're trying to figure out if her son is guilty of murdering this girl in their town. He's on trial for doing it, and you're going through the trial. There's lots of court proceedings in here. There's also lots of facts about bees in here, which I thought was really interesting. And there's themes. If you are someone that is in the LGBTQ plus community, this book has something to do with that. I don't want to give too much away because a big part of it is a part of the plot. But oh my god, this book is incredible. This book is incredible. It touched my heart. I learned new things with it. This is the only book that I've ever read by Jodi, but I do follow her on TikTok, and she is an amazing advocate. Like, I love everything that she posts. I have to read more about her. I have to. So if you've read a Jodi book and you're like, that is my favorite, tell me what it is, because I want to read more. Number 4, I have Fast by Millie Belazar. Y'all, this is another Kindle Unlimited book, and I have to get the physical copy for this one because this book was such an experience for me. I need to look up the trigger warnings on this one for sure, because there are some very triggering things. Basically, this is just a book where we're following a young girl through some very dark times when she was younger, all the way until I think it's like 25 or 30 years down the line. So like, it's like a very long span of her life, and she starts out with such a traumatic childhood, but she meets this boy who helps her through her childhood, and then by the end of the book you're seeing her life as it is as she gets older, and she goes up into this beautiful woman and how she connects back with this man. And y'all, it's just such an incredible book. It is such a great story of going through trials and tribulations to get to the end, and seeing that even from the depths of hell, like, you can rise up and you can have a beautiful life. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Again, very trigger heavy, but I feel like this is such an important book, and so it's one that I'm very, very happy that I read. At number 3, we have The Favorite Girl by Monica Arya, another one that is on Kindle Unlimited, but I will be buying the physical copy because oh my word, this is one of my favorite thrillers, y'all, and it is so sick. It is so twisted, so sick and twisted for sure, but it is so freaking good. In this book, we are following a young girl named Demi, and she is going through some stuff, y'all. Like, she has had a rough life. She gets this job opportunity with this very prestige, well-known family that she cannot turn down, and things are just not as they seem whatsoever. Things just start hitting the fan, and I cannot wait for the second book. This book, y'all, there's just so much about it that like consumes me still to this day, and I cannot stop thinking about it because I'm like, what? But oh my god, this is such an incredible thriller. It is one where you are going to want to sit down on your couch and just read all day, and you're not going to want to put it down until it's over. And trust me, I know, because I did the same. But wow, trigger warnings. Look up the trigger warnings. That is for sure. There is quite a bit in this book. Number 2, we have The House of Eve by Sadiqa Johnson. Oh my gosh, again, as a woman who is experiencing infertility, this book just hit something within me, and I just felt so closely connected to it. It's a historical fiction book where we're following 2 young women who have very different lives. Very, very, very different lives. They couldn't be more different, but you see how they connect and how they intertwine in such a beautiful way. And the way that this book is set up in the end, it's kind of like we're going to get a book number 2 out of it. So I hope that we do. But if you're someone who loves historical fiction and you are looking for something that is just going to pull at your heartstrings, first of all, there are some triggers in here actually. But I recommend this book. It's such an incredible book. I keep saying incredible because I have no other way to describe these books, y'all. Like, they are all so good. And in the number 1 coveted spot, we have Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter. This is a thriller book I will never shut up about. Never. It also takes place in Georgia, in Atlanta, and in Athens actually, which I grew up in Athens, so it was crazy to see things that I was familiar with in this book. This book is so disturbing. I cannot tell you absolutely anything. You just have to go look up the trigger warnings, dive into it. That's all I can tell you. Oh, well, I can't tell you. It's sisters, basically. Sisters who are trying to figure out what happened to their younger sister because she was murdered when they were younger, and that's all I can tell you. Get this book immediately, please. This is my favorite thriller I've ever read, hands down. I do not think anything will ever top it. Well, I don't know, maybe it will. Oh, wow, trigger warnings, trigger warnings, trigger warnings. But that is it. That is all 63 books that I read in the year of 2024 and how I rate them. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This was probably the longest video I've ever filmed. If you want more bookish content, let me know. I had a lot of fun making this one, so I would love to make more. But I love you guys, and I will see you later. Bye, guys.